You know that incredibly specific feeling you get when the lights go down in a movie theater?
Oh, yeah. Best part of the experience.
Right. The previews finally end, the room goes pitch black, the audio swells, and for a couple of hours you completely surrender.
You really do. It's like a sanctuary.
Exactly. You just, you let go of your stress, your to-do list, the real world outside those doors, and you just let the screen do the driving. It feels like the ultimate escape.
Just pure, harmless, passive entertainment. We treat that time as a necessary break from reality.
But what if that exact moment, like the exact second you drop your guard and get comfortable in the dark, is when you are actually the most vulnerable to being programmed?
That's a heavy thought.
It is.
Yeah.
What if that escape is doing, a massive amount of heavy lifting that we're completely blind to? Welcome to today's deep dive. We're taking you on a really fascinating journey today.
Yeah, we're exploring the profound role that entertainment plays in shaping public behavior and quite literally manufacturing consensus.
It's wild. Today, we're pulling our insights from a content platform called Knowledge is King. Specifically, we're looking at the work of creator Mark Wells.
He's done some incredible research on this.
He really has. He just posted a really compelling video on August 8, 2026. It's titled Architects of the Screen: How 1915 Cinema Built the Mind Control Machine.
Such a great title.
It's so good. We're also folding in several of his related essays from the site to give you the full picture. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
The central premise here is that we tend to think of movies and, now the internet as just ways to kill time.
Right. Just a distraction.
Yeah, but the source material is arguing that these platforms were engineered right from the jump as tools for mass psychological conditioning.
Right. The core thesis of Wells' work is that this influence wasn't accidental at all.
Not at all.
The entertainment industry was recognized early on as this ultimate vehicle for soft power governance. It's a way to steer the ship of public opinion without the public ever realizing someone else is at the wheel.
Which is pretty terrifying when you think about it.
It is. And before we get into the historical mechanics of this, I actually want to make a quick note for you listening right now.
Oh, good point. Yes.
The sources we're looking at today touch on some major political institutions, specifically the White House and the defense sector.
Heavy hitters.
Exactly. So our goal in this deep dive is to impartially explore the arguments and the history presented by the source material. We're strictly looking at the architecture of these ideas regarding these institutions without, endorsing any specific political side.
Right. We're just here to take apart the machinery and see how the gears turn. We're putting the ideas under the microscope.
Impartial observers.
So to do that, the source material takes us all the way back to a very specific starting point. 1915.
E.W. Griffith.
Yes. His silent film, The Birth of a Nation. The source argues this wasn't just like a popular movie. It was a cultural earthquake that broke box office records.
And essentially built the blueprint for behavioral control. What's fascinating here is that the source views this film not as a piece of art, but as the foundational test run for mass psychological conditioning.
A test run?
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, put yourself in the shoes of an average person in 1915. Prior to this, your entire experience with cinema was likely 50-second novelties in the Nickelodeon.
Like a train coming toward the camera.
Right. A train, a man sneezing, a horse running. Your brain is accustomed to the slow, physical pace of the early 20th century. Then suddenly you're placed in a dark room for 3 hours.
Surrounded by hundreds of people.
Surrounded by people, yeah, while a full orchestra plays live music to accompany a massive, emotionally manipulative alternate history blasted onto a giant screen.
It's sensory overload for that era.
Completely. People literally didn't have the neurological defenses to process that level of intense manufactured emotional stimuli.
They were completely defenseless, and the
Yeah.
text points out a chilling detail about how far this reached to.
Oh, the private screening.
Yes. This wasn't just playing in local theaters. There were private screenings at the White House. It reached the absolute highest levels of power, granting it this immense top-down legitimacy.
Which is crucial for what happened next.
Right, because the source claims this film didn't just change minds, it incited real-world terror. It pushed people to take physical, violent action in the streets based on a total fiction they saw in a theater.
Because when a society sees a narrative endorsed at the highest levels, it bypasses the part of your brain that asks, is this true?
It just becomes reality.
Exactly. It tells the public, this isn't a story, this is our reality. It moved cinema from a passive viewing experience to an active behavioral trigger.
It sounds less like entertainment and more like, I don't know, a software update.
That's a great way to put it.
You know, you think you're just putting your brain in sleep mode by going to the movies for a fun night out, but really that's the exact moment the system starts downloading new operating parameters directly into your subconscious.
You've locked the doors, turned off the lights, and let the payload deploy.
Yes, it's like a Trojan horse. But the irony of this being a silent medium is wild to me. No explosive sound design, no dialogue, yet it had the loudest possible impact on real-world behavior.
It really did.
So how does sitting in a dark room, looking at moving pictures, bypass our critical thinking filters so effectively? I mean, how does that work?
It relies entirely on the mechanics of human biology and sensory deprivation. When you sit in a dark theater, your peripheral vision goes black.
Right.
Your brain, which evolved to constantly scan the horizon for threats, suddenly has nothing to latch onto except the singular, massive square of light in front of you.
You're completely tunneled in.
Exactly. In that environment of sensory restriction, your cognitive defenses lower naturally.
Okay.
Think about the real world. If someone walked up to you on the street and started shouting a highly politicized, controversial story, your guard would immediately go up.
Oh, 100%. I'd be looking for an exit.
Right. You'd evaluate their motives, you'd look for holes in their logic. But in a theater, because you've categorized the experience beforehand as entertainment, you willingly suspend your disbelief.
You want to be taken for a ride.
Yes. You accept the premise because you want to enjoy the emotional ride. And while your frontal lobe is busy tracking the hero's journey, the underlying messages like who is dangerous, what is considered normal, whose lives have value, they slip right past your analytical mind.
And plant themselves right in your subconscious.
Exactly.
But that sensory deprivation trick relies on you being trapped in a theater. The 1915 blueprint didn't stop there. What happens when that screen leaves the theater, scales up with billions of dollars, and becomes an inescapable part of modern global culture?
Well, it evolves into a highly sophisticated machine. The source material draws a direct line from 1915 cinema straight to what it calls modern defense-backed blockbusters.
Yeah, there's a quote from Mark Wells here that really anchors this whole transition. He states that the entertainment machine was engineered from day one to, quote, control what you see in the dark and dictate how you behave in the light.
I love that quote.
Yeah.
That sentence perfectly encapsulates the concept of soft power governance.
Which is what exactly, just for the listener?
Sure. So hard power is physical force. The military, the police, economic sanctions. Hard power forces you to comply, often against your will, and it breeds resentment.
No, nobody likes being forced.
Right. Soft power, though, is cultural influence.
Mm.
It shapes your values, your desires, and your baseline worldview so that you actually want to conform.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So when the source talks about defense-backed blockbusters, it's pointing to the very real documented synergy between Hollywood and military institutions.
Ah, like the big summer movies?
Exactly. If a studio wants to make a massive summer action movie, and they want the audience to feel the visceral thrill of real fighter jets, real aircraft carriers, and real tanks, they can't afford to build those.
Right, they get them from the defense sector.
You do.
But those tanks don't come for free, do they?
No, there's always a trade. In exchange for the hardware, the script usually has to be reviewed. The military has to be portrayed as competent, heroic, and necessary.
So the narrative gets shaped.
Exactly. The result is a continuous diet of thrilling narratives that establish a specific consensus on what heroism looks like. It shapes public opinion without ever feeling like state propaganda.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, because I have to push back on this a little bit.
Oh, for it.
Wait, hold on. When I buy a ticket to a massive superhero movie or a huge action blockbuster, I'm going to see CGI buildings blow up. I'm going to see car chases. I am completely 100% aware that the guy in the cape or the fighter pilot saving the world isn't real.
Sure.
So how is a movie studio programming me if I know going in that none of it is actually happening?
That's a great question. Because the programming isn't in the explicit dialogue or the CGI explosions. The programming is in the structural assumptions of the world you're watching.
Structural assumptions.
Yeah. You aren't being handed a pamphlet that says, support increased military spending. Instead, you're being immersed in a narrative universe where a specific terrifying threat exists, and the only logical possible way to solve that threat is through the mechanisms of the state, or overwhelming force, or the military.
Oh, I see.
The audience doesn't notice the conditioning because they're solely focused on the emotional stakes of the protagonist, like, will they save their family? Will they defuse the bomb?
Right. I'm just eating my popcorn, waiting for the good guy to win.
Exactly. But when the hero finally saves the day using a specific set of institutional tools, your brain biochemically associates those institutions with safety, victory, and relief.
Oh, man. So the update happens in the background while I'm distracted playing the game. I think I'm rejecting the fiction, but I'm actually absorbing the structural rules of the universe.
Spot on. You walk out of the theater feeling entertained, but your baseline assumptions about how the real world operates and what institutions are necessary to keep you safe have been subtly recalibrated.
That's a profound shift in perspective, but it brings us to a massive evolutionary leap in this whole system, because its screen is no longer just a giant piece of canvas in a multiplex that we visit once a month.
Not at all.
It shrank down, it moved into our living rooms, and then it moved into our pockets.
And that changes everything. The movie theater was a mass broadcast. Hundreds of people sitting in the dark, absorbing the exact same narrative at the exact same time.
A shared experience.
Right. But the smartphone shattered that broadcast and turned it into a hyper-targeted individual feed. You are carrying the dark room with you everywhere you go.
And Mark Wells explores the mechanics of this beautifully on the Knowledge is King platform. He has an essay titled Feelies, How Your Emotions Became Their Remote Control.
That title alone is it's a gut punch.
It really is a gut punch. We used to physically hold a piece of plastic to change the channel. Now our physiological reactions are the remote control.
It's a complete inversion of agency. On the modern internet, the algorithm is constantly reading you. And this ties directly into another of his essays, The Rage Dividend.
The rage dividend, great.
Yeah, in the early days of social media, we assumed the most valuable resource was just raw demographic data, like what shoes you buy, where you live. But the source argues that data is secondary. The most valuable resource to mine is rage.
But why rage specifically? I mean, cat videos are hugely popular. Why isn't joy or inspiration the primary dividend?
Because joy doesn't trigger a survival response. Let's look at the biological loop. Joy might make you smile, feel a sense of contentment, and actually put the phone down to go enjoy your life.
Which is terrible for the platform's metrics.
Exactly. Anger, outrage, and tribal friction are deeply tied to your amygdala, the threat detection center of your brain. When you scroll past a headline or a post that makes you angry, your heart rate physically spikes.
You get that flushed feeling.
Yes, you get a microdose of adrenaline. Your body prepares for a fight.
And on a smartphone, fighting means scrolling, commenting, quote tweeting, or sharing.
You're compelled to act. More importantly, when your blood pressure rises, your thumb stops scrolling for a fraction of a second. The platform measures that millisecond of dwell time.
It knows it hooked you.
It does. It recognizes that this specific type of friction captured your nervous system. So if the platform's goal is to maximize the time you spend looking at the screen, because time equals ad revenue, it quickly learns that it has to feed you a continuous, escalating diet of things that upset you. Rage keeps your eyes glued to the light.
And that friction isn't just organic either. It's not just a natural byproduct of people having different opinions online. The source actually has a specific term for how this division is managed.
The orchestrated wedge.
Yes, the orchestrated wedge. The argument here is that these deep social fractures, the extreme polarization we see every day, rarely happen by accident.
The orchestrated wedge suggests that this friction is a structural necessity for the system to survive. If a united content populace doesn't generate endless engagement loops, then division literally becomes the business model.
So they have to keep us fighting.
Exactly. By driving a wedge between different demographics, algorithmically sorting people into opposing camps and feeding them the worst possible caricatures of the other side, the platforms create a perpetual motion machine of outrage.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
It is. Each side reacts to the extreme behavior of the other, generating infinite data and revenue. But crucially, it makes the public incredibly predictable and easy to manage. A public that is exhausted, distracted, and endlessly fighting itself over algorithmic bait is not a public that is looking up to critically examine the larger structures of power.
Wow. Which brings us to perhaps the most bizarre, striking detail from all of the source material. Wells has a piece titled White House Octagon, the New Roman Circus.
This part is wild.
It is. He points to a very specific date in our recent history, June 14th, 2026. He says that on this day, a metaphor became our reality, right on the South Lawn.
It's the ultimate convergence of entertainment, behavioral control, and state power.
Literally a cage match.
Literally. I mean, for decades, politics has been slowly merging with reality television. But setting up a literal combat octagon on the grounds of a major political institution, it means the state is no longer hiding the ball.
They're just leaning into it.
Right. They've recognized that logic, press conferences, and policy debates no longer move the needle for a populace conditioned by algorithms.
So if you have a massive domestic issue you want to bury or a policy failure you need the public to ignore, you don't issue a white paper. You give them a cage match.
You lean entirely into the tactics of the Roman Empire, bread and circuses.
Right, the Colosseum.
Exactly. The Roman emperors knew that as long as the Colosseum was full of blood, spectacle, and overwhelming emotion, the citizens wouldn't riot over the crumbling infrastructure of the empire itself.
Because they're too distracted by the fight in front of them.
The White House Octagon event wasn't just a bizarre cultural moment. It was a demonstration that the highest levels of power have adopted the algorithmic model of governance. Keep the populace entertained with visceral, emotional, tribal combat.
So what does this all mean? If our emotions are literally the remote control changing the channel and rage is the daily dividend paying out to these tech platforms, are we just living in an updated Colosseum? Is this orchestrated wedge essentially a feature of modern life rather than a bug we can fix?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the source argues resoundingly that it is a feature. Look at the titles of Wells's other works. Obsessed with what you hate and think for yourself, not for the machine.
Those titles are incredibly direct.
Very. The underlying mechanism from D.W. Griffith in 1915 to the South Lawn Octagon in 2026 is exactly the same. The goal of the architect is to keep you obsessed with the spectacle, to keep you obsessed with the friction, and obsessed with what you hate.
Because it works.
Because anger makes you predictable. When you're operating on pure amygdala-driven emotion, you are reacting, not thinking.
Yeah.
You are performing the exact behavioral loop the machine requires to function.
It's like we've been handed a script the moment we log on, and we're just screaming our lines at each other, completely convinced we improvised them ourselves.
That is exactly it. The medium changed from the flickering, silent film reel to an infinite algorithmic feed. But the objective of soft power governance remains untouched.
Manage the herd.
Manage the herd's behavior by occupying their attention so completely that independent critical thought becomes functionally impossible.
Wow. Let's take a breath and summarize the journey we've just been on, because there is a tremendous amount to digest here.
There really is.
We started with the foundational premise that entertainment is not, and perhaps never has been, just a passive escape. Starting with the sensory deprivation of 1915 cinema, the screen proved it could rewrite history and trigger real-world physical behavior.
The Trojan horse.
Right. And that theater blueprint evolved into the defense-backed blockbusters that subtly program our structural assumptions about who the good guys are and what institutions we need to survive.
Exactly.
And finally, that silver screen left the theater and moved into our pockets. Now, algorithms mine our nervous systems for rage, treating our biological responses like a remote control to keep us clicking, arguing, and entirely distracted by the circus.
Bread and circuses, updated for the digital age.
The screen, in all its forms, has always been an architect of behavior.
This raises an important question, and it's really the overarching theme of all the source material we analyze today. How do you navigate a daily life where the primary tools of communication, like the apps you use to talk to your family, are explicitly designed to bypass your logic?
It feels impossible.
It's hard, but the critical need here is recognition. You have to develop the media literacy to see the machinery at work. Once you recognize that the wedge is orchestrated, once you feel that spike in your heart rate and realize your anger is paying someone else's dividend, you regain the ability to step back.
You break the loop.
You stop being a passive node in the network, unconsciously directed by the narrative, and you start evaluating it from the outside.
It's about recognizing you're in the Colosseum so you can finally find the exit. You know, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, something that pushes this into the next era. We've traced this from a silent, grainy movie in 1915 all the way to the hyper-targeted, rage-mining social feeds of 2026.
A pretty wild trajectory.
It is. The historical progression is clear, the immersion continually gets deeper, and the psychological targeting gets sharper. So what happens in the near future?
Oh, man.
Right. What happens when fully immersive, AI-generated entertainment becomes completely indistinguishable from baseline reality? When the screen isn't just a rectangle in your pocket, but is wrapped entirely around your field of vision, generating a world tailored specifically to your unique psychological profile, your fears, and your desires in real time.
That's the ultimate darkroom.
It is. How will you know which of your beliefs are truly yours and which were simply manufactured in the dark? It's something to think about the next time you let the screen do the driving. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.